Shocking title: China's Property Nightmare. The $13 trillion economic collapse threatening millions. Return content 70 of original word count. China's economic foundation is crumbling as its once booming property market implodes, triggering widespread panic and potentially catastrophic consequences across the nation's financial system. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party maintained an unspoken agreement with its citizens: political obedience in exchange for economic prosperity. After the 1989 Tiananmen Square tragedy, where thousands of students seeking democracy were silenced, the CCP offered an alternative path: economic growth without political freedom. This bargain held firm for years, lifting millions from poverty and fueling China's meteoric rise. Today, that promise lies in ruins. The cornerstone of China's economic miracle, its real estate market, has collapsed. Over 60 million vacant homes dot the landscape, equivalent to 6 Manhattan-sized ghost cities. An astonishing $13 trillion worth of housing projects sit abandoned or unfinished. Property values have plummeted for 16 consecutive months, with prices falling nearly 6% in October 2024 alone. Unlike Western economies where wealth diversification is common, approximately 70% of Chinese household wealth is tied directly to property. There's no plan B, no significant stock portfolios, retirement accounts, or alternative investments. When housing crashes in China, families lose everything. The crisis began in earnest when Evergrande, once Asia's largest property developer, exposed the industry's fatal flaws. The company operated what essentially amounted to a massive Ponzi scheme, collecting full payment for homes not yet built, then using those funds to purchase more land rather than completing promised construction. This pattern repeated across the industry, creating a house of cards that began collapsing when the government introduced debt restrictions in 2020. What made this practice particularly insidious was the complicity of local governments, which derived roughly half their revenue from land leases to developers. The very authorities responsible for protecting citizens from predatory business practices were profiting handsomely from them. As construction halted nationwide, desperate homeowners who had invested their life savings found themselves owners of concrete shells without electricity, plumbing, or windows. Some moved into these uninhabitable structures as a form of protest, like a 55-year-old woman who carries water jugs up flights of stairs daily and shares an outdoor toilet with 20 neighbors. The mounting frustration eventually sparked unprecedented resistance. In July, homebuyers from hundreds of stalled projects across China announced a collective mortgage boycott, refusing payments until construction resumed. Despite government censorship and the risk of disappearance, street protests erupted in multiple cities, a remarkable development in post-Tiananmen China. The banking sector now faces its own existential threat. Unlike the 2008 U.S. housing crisis, Chinese banks hold loans collateralized by properties that don't actually exist yet. As defaults accelerate, financial institutions are imposing withdrawal limits, triggering panic among depositors. In one incident, over 1,000 people gathered outside the People's Bank of China after a rural bank froze billions in deposits, funds that had been illegally diverted to failing real estate ventures. To contain the damage, regulators have merged or bailed out hundreds of small lenders. China's rural banking sector holds assets worth approximately 1/3 of the entire U.S. banking system, but the true extent of toxic real estate exposure remains unknown. Meanwhile, other economic indicators flash red. Industrial profits declined for the third consecutive year in 2024, falling 3.3%. Automakers saw an 8% profit drop. Household borrowing has turned negative as families postpone major purchases. Youth unemployment has reached record levels, with millions of college graduates entering a job market where degrees no longer guarantee employment. These desperate graduates call themselves Rotten Tail Kids, a sad reference to the abandoned Rotten Tail buildings that define China's landscape. For older citizens, retirement dreams have evaporated. Nearly 94 million Chinese over age 60 remain in the workforce, about 13% of the labor force, with many forced to return to physically demanding jobs just to survive. The government's response has proven inadequate. Despite authorizing a record 10 trillion yuan in new bonds to cover hidden debt, international ratings agency Fitch downgraded China's outlook, warning that the country's borrowing could soon exceed levels seen after the 2009 global financial crisis, but without the robust growth that facilitated recovery then. Beijing has deployed traditional economic tools: tax cuts, infrastructure spending, and stimulus packages, but these measures barely register when public confidence has collapsed. With nationwide protests expanding, mortgage boycotts growing, and bank deposits increasingly frozen, pressure continues mounting on a system that appears increasingly unsustainable. As one expert predicted, this housing crisis could prove 100 times worse than the 2008 financial collapse that shook Western economies to their core. For a country where economic stability has long substituted for political freedom, the stakes couldn't be higher. What happens when the economic miracle that justified decades of authoritarian control finally unravels? For millions of ordinary Chinese citizens caught between financial ruin and political repression, the answer may determine not just their economic future, but the very structure of Chinese society. Don't forget to share your thoughts about China's economic situation in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis of global economic trends and share this video with friends who need to understand what's happening in the world's second largest economy. Your support helps us continue bringing you quality content.